Hi, I'm Seamless, and today is still Wednesday for me, which means it's time for a new viewer track review video. If you would like to have one of your songs featured in one of these videos, feel free to head on down to the Discord featured in the description of this video, and within there is a channel for submitting with rules and people to help you out just in case some things work or don't, just to make sure that I can see what things are when I pick them randomly to be put on into one of these videos. Up today first is Multipolar by Kusoro. Kusoro, yes. Not too ambiguous, that one. Let's see what this sounds like. This was nuts for a lot of reasons. The thing that gets me the most about this is it has so much stuff happen. Look how much stuff is happening. The blur of unintelligibleness this should be is astounding, but it's not. Every single piece of spectrum is cared for and has exactly the right amount of dynamic range to be this loud. Some of the choices about what got used at this level are some things I take issue with. Like, for example, the main element that is this noise here. I'm gonna play it again. Here it comes. It has a lot more noise than it is anything else. But here's the thing. While still being this powerful, it is exactly as maximum amount of loud it can be. It isn't doing the top heavy thing. It's not doing the too distorted up here thing. It is the right amount of rolled off. It's the right amount of just everything. I don't know how many I don't know how many choices were made that led here, but like whatever your instincts are on like power ratios and like proportions are right. Because on top of this being the crazy present it is, we can still hear the drums perfectly at all times. And here's what's neat about this section is immediately after that, we get this section. And now you can kind of finally hear what those little vocal bits are beneath this. And I like that as a presence more than I do these things, but that I really can't say any of this was any kind of unintentional choice because of just how well formed it is. If like I'm gonna play a part again and watch the high low mid here. Actually, I guess we don't have to look at it. We can still see it. So I'm always talking to people about how their sub dynamic range should look, and what I say is that it doesn't totally matter what the level of either element is, as long as there is a visible difference between them. Specifically, that the kick has uniform visible loudness that's like the literal level. It's not so much about a compression game that it is on the master when you look at all the thing together, like on the limiter. It's more about the fact that in order for a kick to feel bigger than a bass, there's now really a better way to do it than just to make it literally that way. And the same is true with the mids and the highs coming out of here. Which strikes me about that, because again, normally things that have this much stuff going on usually have pretty intense like deficits in these areas, but look how uniform the dynamic range is pretty much all the time. And it's not like a uniform crushed togetherness. It's uniform in the sense that the maximum and the minimum is always the same range, which is exactly as far as it should be to make this amount of like what this is survive how it is. It just is very impressive. Like this is a power lift of a song. That's what the heck this was. So nice stat. That was good. Okay. Coming up next, we have a folder that's hidden somewhere on my desktop. There it is. We have Beanbags 3.0 Mix V2 from DeanReid. Let's see what this is like. After I note the time. And start the track from the beginning. All right, so having just heard the song prior to this, you might oh, oop, you might have a heard this and thought, wow, this is like a bit of a reduction, right? But here's what's special about this. Let's grab a part. Looking at the low, mid, high again. So with the description of how the other one looked, this pretty well looks like just the same way, but less. And that's true, but that's because this is a pre-master, I'm assuming. It says it's remastered in the name. Is that what it said? Let me go find the invisible folder. No, yeah, mixed V2. So not a master. So this is the kind of threshold behavior you actually want to feed into a mastering situation to make it come out like that previous track. And that's sort of like that. For example, the kicks and snares ability to punch through everything is a bit of a literal power situation. Look how much higher these transients are on these frequencies. This will guarantee that when it gets fed into a huge limiter, the things that'll survive most are going to be the things that have to, the kick and the snare. Same thing with the bass and the kick difference. This one might have needed. That's pretty okay. The sub is a little erratic. This is one of those reasons. This is why we do separate subs in general, is to avoid situations where the level is uneven. It's not even about so much just like a regularity or a phase solidness just because we like solid notes. It's mostly a consistent mixing proposition. People who are really good at that can do fun things like whip around the pitch and the volume and mess around with stereo and whatever, but like intentionally and as fills or as the point of the genre they're doing, because that's what bass music is. And but ultimately though, we want to avoid this situation where the sub has like a different kind of shelving per power, but that makes the kick kind of hard to perceive. As like what's cool about these visual representations of the audio is that this is pretty well what we're looking at in our brains. And when we talk about making dynamic range and as like a mixing thing, this is the whole point. Like as well as it's hard for us to visually differentiate what might be a kick in here, so too is it when we hear it. There's a little bit a different sensation, obviously, but that's why the metering is us like visualing. Wow, visualizing as such, and we can use that, and we can make pretty literal choices about this, about just visually, is it working? Is it bigger? Can I tell? Yeah, cool, nice. Same thing with these guys. Like you can really tell. That's fine. There could be motion in between it, and like the tighter you get it, the easier and harder and louder you can make it. Like the harder you push it, the more the tiny irregularities become big irregularities, because that's the nature of the pushing, is that you magnify the activity in your track. Which again is why that previous track was so freaking impressive, because the difficulty is like every one of these little weird motions is a thing, and this track didn't have nearly as much stuff in it. Which is usually the easier way to make something like that. The easier way to make something big and loud is to have only a few things happening, so that there's only so much to focus on, and you can push it so really hard. So really hard. I'm doing words good today. Anyway, good track. This is a fine pre-mix. I would nail in the sub a little harder, but honestly, if it feels okay, like this is a pretty fun, like big old progression on the thing. Like it's a nice adventure. So it doesn't gotta be that perfect. Like the things that do gotta be that perfect, if there had to be one, are going to be ones that end up in real specific environments, ones that have incredibly specific specifications, like clubs and video game soundtracks, movie soundtracks. Basically, but you would know. We know pretty much what those are. This though, like things that are kind of like, in my opinion, best absorbed in a private listening environment, just like in a mix or just running in a background. Like you can go wild a bit on some of that stuff because that is devastating if it doesn't work out so well. Plus, not everybody has amazing, monitoring situations, which means that other than your propensity to make things loud or not, it's not 100% as pertinent as it is when you're doing something like a much more catered and specific experience. Onward. Up next, we have Jesus Christ Lysca Remix. Layfield Jesus Christ Lysca Remix. Okay, so I think a person Lysca submitted this. It's the song called Jesus Christ by Layfield. All I got out of the description was that the vocals are the original and everything else is stuff that the person who submitted made it, which is good information to have. And one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of a person who does primarily remixes, not to knock anybody who does it, because some of the best songs ever are remixes, but it's hard to tell what a person did, you know, because if I don't know the original, then I have no idea if like that killer bit that I like about it is anything they did, and then that becomes awkward. If I'm just kind of like, oh, how'd you do it? Come on, that was from the style. Like, oh, okay, nothing to do with anything yet, because we haven't heard the song, so let's listen to it. Second is I hear what time it is. Dang. I could totally see that being in just about anything. Like my time when I was signed to Fixed and I was still releasing music regularly, I had like they're kind of one of the big pillars is working with companies that do work to put their music in stuff. Like for example, a whole lot of their work is actually in Cyberpunk right now, and it's pretty sweet. And one time, like discussing with their manager about like the kind of things that people want, like what is it that this sort of what's the commercial taste, and it's strange because it's not quite the same as popular taste. It's you would think that like sure okay just do whatever Kanye or Katy Perry. Those my pop examples are just gonna get older and older. I don't know how on I am about any of that, but the point is that it's not quite as it's like that actual full on big pop stuff is mostly about being as simple as possible while getting as much done as possible with what you're being as simple as possible, otherwise known as elegance. But what commercial stuff is just a little bit more exciting because it's shorter when they're using the stuff anyway. Like the songs can be as long as they want, and they might even go for like a vocalist version. They usually ask for separate stems probably so they can do individual mixing when they do what's called syncing. But point is that this is exactly that. This is exactly like hyper pop. It's like what the pop angle is, but a cool version of it, a part of it that's actually designed to be engaged with as a direct listening experience, and not as just kind of layered with something else, which would normally be too much for pop. It would normally be like too individually specific to not alienate too many people to put it out of the kind of money sphere that indicates what pop music is. But for commercial stuff, it's beautiful because if you only need snippets of it, then it doesn't exist long enough to do anything other than create an energy, and that's what they want. It's they want the slightly higher version, like higher energy version of it, and it was perfect. This was like on the nose. It's amazing. And the fact that like I don't know what state the vocals were in when you first got them, but the presence of layering with them, with the material underneath it, is like mostly the perfect choice. Like I actually could imagine this being in like a Adventure Time-esque, Steven Universe-esque kind of one of those kinds of some of the more serious moments when they get a real teachable learning moment happens. That's when they whip out this kind of stuff. Most of the time it's a little bit smaller feeling, a little bit more like teensy and intimate, which is cool about that. I dig their style. I can see this. But that's the sort of angle that I could see this working in. It's real cool to see this nailed because it is a bit money. Let's just say that. So good job. It's a good skill to have. It didn't need to be hyper loud or like super powerful. It within its range. Like I noticed it didn't have a whole lot of like it was very dark, right? It didn't have a lot of like high end presence, but I usually imagine versions of things with changes that I think they should have, and this one I couldn't really imagine one better than this. I couldn't really imagine a high end presence on things that would feel better, that wouldn't have ruined how well everything was else together, which is rare because I usually got feelings about that kind of thing, about how powerful stuff could be, but this actually felt pretty good at the power it was. So neato that. Moving on, we have Dubswitcher with Skybreak. I try not to know too many things about these songs before I listen to them, but we do know that this is an FL stock file. And we'll have fun things to say about that after the fact, so let's hear the thing. Once I note the time. And we starting? Yes. Nice. So this was a real flat mix, wasn't it? The most of the time when I look at how these levels are mixed together, like the first track when I was saying about how it had a perfect kind of angle on it, if you were to look at the sort of the vertical expression of it, like on the histogram, you wouldn't have seen a flat line. You saw this little bump happening, and then the track after that would have had that, but it was a bit low. This track was just flat, and it's not necessarily wrong to do that, but this is, I think, a product of something that people get warned about a lot, is what happens when you monitor at full volume all the time. When that happens, you get used to a high level of your bass and your mids. You get essentially punched down on you, so your threshold changes. But what this also means is that you get used to a higher level, meaning you can put your highs at even lower because it's turned up, because it's compensated for. You get to be like, okay, I'll just have him lower. It just feels better. To the point where if I or someone else listens to it at a lower sort of normal listening level, it sounds dark. It sounds kind of like there's a big old like low pass on your highs. But this definitely was very together, very snappy, like you got a lot of work done with the groove snare clap 30 or 20, whichever one was that one. I got a lot of use out of it too. They had the right kind of transient in the right kind of place. That's and you like there's not a lot about this that screams like, oh, FL. It's kind of hard for that to be like really true anymore, right? Like there's enough stuff to use, and the synths can do pretty much whatever. And this flex, which does everything else, it's rapidly approaching very hard to detect that like a person is using FL unless they go real basic and use like only like the naked samples and don't do much with them. Like the recognizable sample in the snare in here wasn't like really egregiously used, which I find isn't really the case sometimes when I hear a lot of like FL-centric files that use just like the basic normal samples, and for some reason it really screams it. But other than the kind of high-end darkness a bit, and it's really low, like we were looking at the low, mids, and highs most of the time, and it's basically like if you just take this band and put it up like a dB, and that would be enough of a balance shift for that to kind of do the smile, the smile architecture that just tends to sound good to humans. Nothing wrong with doing that. Yeah, cool. Up next, we have Markka with 2 Ks. Colors, spelled like British. Yeah, that's bright. Let's see what this one's balanced like. It's a fun looking expression. It's very pitchy. Let's see how. And layer my windows right. Wow, that was really good. This was a very, like, everything about this was exactly as solid as it should be, and some of it was just downright awesome. Like this, one of those, that Reese that came in on its own. Like this is something. This is a bit of a lost art here. Not just doing these kinds of bases that they're all over the place, but a lot of tracks in the days when this stuff was like when Spore was putting stuff out that would regularly smash people to pieces, and some of those songs had the balls to do things like just play the bass by itself because it was so freaking awesome that doing it was just, there was nothing to hide. It was just like, this is just how awesome it is. Like, and because how awesome it was, you just need more of it. And this sort of thing is a bit of a lost art because I feel like people are a little bit afraid of their phrases sometimes. I don't know. I just see it happening less. I all I really can say about that. But like, I like seeing it. I like seeing someone having enough faith in their content to display it like this. You know what I mean? It really, it means at least that the person did. Even if that, even if this felt like a bit of a procedural idea, a lot of people still shy away from it. I'm not really sure, but this also just sounded really cool. And what's really just nice about this is that it's not that complicated, but it's so tight. It's so on. It's so exactly what happened. Like, and it needed to be that way, and it felt right. And on top of all this, it's all mixed beautifully. At first, I was just a little bit on the fence about how loud this stuff was, but unlike the first track where it was about this loud in this range. The first track smeared it a little too hard, too long, which made me feel like it was too much. This was just on the edge of too much. It wasn't exactly too much. It was a little bit much. It's much. It's not too much, but much is great, isn't it? Like I mean, damn, how much is this? This is a lot. The harshness of kicking a snare hit like this, but it all cut through perfectly. And I've just been listening to the last noisier radio, before they do Vision Radio, and a lot of that I was just like on my way through this. I was just thinking this is like a track from noisier radio that someone mixed to be put out on a neuropunk mix. Which, if y'all haven't heard neuropunk mixes, y'all just go to just YouTube neuropunk and have fun. There's hundreds of them. Hundreds? There's a lot. I don't know how many there are. There are many, but they're all of them are excellent. And this had that power. This had that kind of power in my mind, and I like that because it's rare, and also rare that it's expressed and shown off like that. More of this should be things. Anywho, good job. Moving on, we have Volatil by Aestho. Wow, though. All right. Uh, let's have a beginning. All right, well, that should get submitted to whatever lo-fi beats for cowboys there are. This is pretty cool. Like Western hop, like chill, chill hop Western vibes. Like I dig it. It's outlaw country, but uh, like a bit of hip hop involved. It just, and I've definitely heard mashups like hip hop tracks and then sometimes house tracks too. It kind of works out, right? And there's also that one Avicii song. It was pretty sweet. Not gonna lie. Honestly, more of this should be explored. It's extremely quiet, very low key. Basically, doesn't seem like it's compressed on the master. Uh, honestly, I have nothing to compare this to. Hmm. I bet you Moody Good would do a really good one of these. Coming up next, we have a track from Hoodoo Blonde. It's called A Solution. Just a little bit louder. Wow. This track managed to have its cake and eat it too. And in the sense that either bit of this could have been its own entire kind of genre. Like there's this whole bit, like we've already heard of a couple examples of tracks that are essentially like this sort of energy as the whole point, and that's absolutely something that is enjoyable and consumable and targetable. And then there's also this, which is just awesome. Like this is I really like the airy art that comes from people's sort of understanding of delay modulation and choice to also translate that into reverb modulation, and also the things that are available to let you do that. There's all sorts of neats happening in here, but there's also a fun bit of layering later when the more extreme kind of like harmonics come into play. You can see them crossing around up here. And this is a fun strategy when you take two things that have extremes, like noticeable, very individualized extremes, and you lay them all together to the point where the bits that are too much become a bit of a chaos that's blurred together that hides the hardest and most of the extremes, leaving behind like an averaged uniqueness. And that's a great like just sound design strategy in general. And this was the difficulty of that though is that it's a power to mix, and this track handled power lovely. Not even just with that one, but also the fact like the negative space that's present in something that's this loud, while also having this quality in this section. The energy in this section that, and again, could be its own track, fits with something this powerful. That this would be something if someone described to me that they wanted to do before they did it, I would tell them would be a bad idea, just because it's so hard to do. Not necessarily because it wouldn't come out like couldn't be amazing, because this is amazing, but the difficulty in getting here is real. So like, clap, haven't done so. This is epic a bit. It did take kind of a bit to get here though, and well, like committed experience wise, like if I know I'm just gonna listen to the thing, like that kind of thing is neat. If I had just heard this in a mix, I don't know how long I would have been like, this is an okay level of energy having just come from probably this level somewhere else. And I gotta wonder also how this would get mixed into stuff if someone did mix it. How much of this would survive? Also, I just like harder things, so maybe I just am being biased in this thing. I want more of this. But otherwise, excellent. Good stuff. People did pretty awesome today. I enjoyed the tracks. Thanks for sending them to me. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.